Hi gang, so in this video I am finally going to review the newer eyeshadow palettes in my collection. And this has been a long time coming because I keep saying that I want to do it and then I keep putting it off. But yeah, I think I have quite solid opinions now. Here is kind of a video of my consolidated thoughts. There's not going to be a particular order to these kind of reviews. So the first one is the Urban Decay Stoned Vibes palette. I tried this out. I did like the looks that I could get out of it. I did think the shades, some of the shades are a little bit more unique. For example, Opal Aura Jade is quite pretty. Maybe Raw Energy. But my overall criticism of this particular palette is, one, I don't like the formula of these. I don't think they're particularly good. You can get them to work. You can get them to look nice on the eye. But it's a little bit flaky. It's a little bit hard to smooth out for some shades, particularly Ojo, which is a beautiful shade, by the way. But it doesn't kind of smooth out the way that I want it to. It looks a bit patchy. As you can see, they're quite, some significant dips in the pan. The formula itself is quite malleable, I guess. And then the 4 shades on the side are just kind of, they're okay. If you have a really deep skin tone, I don't know if this would be deep, these shades will be deep enough for you. So yeah, all in all, I don't really like this palette, and I don't really think it's worth the price. And I think this has been the same kind of feeling that I've gotten from Urban Decay time and time again. For now, I think I'm just going to cross Urban Decay eyeshadow palettes off my list. Let's move on. Okay, let's go with Nabla Cosmetics. So Nabla does make some of my favorite eyeshadows, single eyeshadow formulas. Their mattes are gorgeous. Their celestial eyeshadows are brilliant. They do what I wish the Urban Decay Stoned Vibes palettes could do. I picked up the Poison Garden palette as well as the Secret palette from Nabla. And honestly, when I look at this palette, I kind of have a little bit of trepidation. I'm like, I'm probably not gonna like it as much. But I have used this a few times, and every time I do a look with it, I'm very happy with the end result. I don't know if it's maybe the arrangement of the shadows that kind of seem a little bit incongruous, is that the word? But in general, I really do like this palette. I like the formulas. They blend very well. The mattes are gorgeous. The shimmers work really nicely. And there's a lot of options that you can play with because there's blues, there's reds, purple, yellow, gold. Next palette I want to talk about is the Secret palette from Nabla. And this one is also a palette that I do really enjoy. I really like the color story of this palette. This one makes a lot more sense than the Poison Garden palette. It's very pleasing to the eye when you first open it up. It has really nice, beautiful packaging. And everything, I think, is very well thought out. Like I said, the formula with Nabla seems pretty consistent on the whole. I do have one palette I want to talk about, which is the Dreamy 2 that I'm not a big fan of. But yeah, this one has lots of beautiful jewel tones. The mattes work very well. They blend very well. They're very pigmented. So are the shimmers. 2 thumbs up for this palette. 2 thumbs up for Poison Garden. Let's talk about the Dreamy 2 palette if I can find it. It's interesting. They say it's the Mystic palette here. But I've always referred to it as the Dreamy 2. So anyway, okay, this palette is beautiful to look at. It does give me gorgeous looks, but I don't like the formula of some of the shades. Like these 2, I don't like the formula of them. I don't know, this particular shade, it's almost impossible to put on the eye. Using my finger didn't really work that well. It's a very strange, it's a very strange shade. It doesn't want to pick up on my finger. It doesn't want to pick up on a wet brush. I really have to work to get it on there. The rest of the shades, I do like Libertine Amaccord. I think I liked this one as well. The packaging itself is beautiful. The color story is gorgeous. I just don't like some of the formulas in here, especially REM. I mean, it's gorgeous if you can get it on, but good luck trying. It takes forever to get it on. If you have any tips, if you have this palette, you know how to get it on well and fast and, you know, quickly, let me know how, because I can't. The methods that I use with it, with a setting spray and the kind of brush, those tried and true methods with every other palette that I've had doesn't work with this shade. Don't know why. Next up, we have the She's in Parties palette by Mert Cosmetics. So this one I was lusting over for quite a while. I guess I'm not as crazy about it as I thought I would be. For one thing, the shade Mean Streak, I feel is a little bit patchy. The rest of the shades, I think, generally blend quite nicely and blend well, and they have really nice full impact. In terms of the tones of the eyeshadows, these three shades are kind of like the same depth. Maybe if one of them was a little bit more mid-toned or a little bit lighter, I would have liked it more. I do like this palette. I just wish it could give me more variance in the kind of looks that I do. One shade could be swapped out and it would make all the difference, and I would feel that that would give me a little bit more diversity. When it comes to the formula and the application and the blending, I think for the most part they meet my expectations of Mert Cosmetics eyeshadows. The color payoff is just amazing, and I love to use that to just deepen up any sort of look. But I will say Mean Streak kind of felt quite patchy. Mean Streak was supposed to be the anchor of the entire palette because it's the deepest, darkest shade. And because it doesn't blend out as well, because it's a little bit patchy, yeah, I feel like it fell short. Next up, we have the Mert Cosmetics Rust palette. Now, I think the opposite can be said for the Rust palette. I didn't expect to like this palette as much as I do. It's not that exciting, but there's no sort of inconsistency with the formulas. The mattes perform really well. The shimmers perform as expected. This Redox is gorgeous. I like this shade a lot. And yeah, there are no duds in this palette, in my opinion. I think all of them perform really well. The color story, while it does seem quite basic, I think there's enough variance in this, and also it's a nice companion palette to, you know, more colorful palettes. If I kind of want to just, you know, take something and make it a little bit more neutral and less peacock-like, I know I've mentioned this before, but I always see this font and think it says rustic. I can't get over it. I always look at this font and think, it's saying rustic, isn't it? But it's not, it's saying rust. I don't get it. Is it just me? Because it really looks like rustic to me. Anyway. So next up, we have the Pat McGrath Labs Celestial Divinity palette. I am satisfied with this palette. I do think the shimmers are really gorgeous. They do meet my expectations of Pat McGrath. I've heard a lot about Pat McGrath, but I don't have any of her other eyeshadow palettes. In general, the shimmers really do impress me. They're really glisteny. They really do glisten very well. They have great pigmentation. They blend out nicely. The mattes also perform well. I don't have any complaints about the mattes. They're nice. They're very pigmented. They also blend very nicely. My only criticism, if I was going to really nitpick, is that I wish there would have been another matte of a different kind of tone, because this one's berry, this one's kind of brick shade, and this one is, I don't know, like a mid-tone dusty pink. I think it could have done with maybe a blue, a dark matte blue, or a dark matte green, something a little bit different to go with maybe this shade right here. I think a green would have been a great complementary color to accompany these shades and make them really pop. So in general, it's a very kind of berry pink palette. I just wish that there was just one shade in here that was like a matte shade, but not a warm toned kind of shade. Okay, one thing I will say is I really don't like these little ribbon things that hold it together. I'm very tempted to cut it off. Because when it comes to doing my makeup, I like having the most kind of surface area to work with. So I like folding the lid back and kind of like laying it flat on the table. So yeah, that is one thing I don't like about the packaging, but other than that, it's fine. Interestingly enough, Martin said that he thought this might be kind of like an indie brand. He thought it didn't look very high quality because the shades at the back, it's kind of just like a sticker. And obviously compared to Pat McGrath, you know, her previous ones, they're all kind of really heavy plastic, and this one's just kind of cardboard. But I mean, I really don't mind cardboard. I prefer cardboard to plastic. I definitely do because it's lighter. Okay, next up I want to talk about the Ultimate Utopia palette from NYX. I can tell you that I'm extremely impressed with this palette. I think there is a great variety of shades. All of the shades that I've tried so far perform very well. They're nicely pigmented. They blend really well. The shimmers can go on really intensely and impactfully if you wet your brush. The main thing is that I think the color story is really, really good. There is a really good mix of shades here, and I think you can do plenty of things with this palette. There's a cool tone section, there's a warm tone section, there's a little bit of a grungy mix of shades thrown in there. I have heard that the smaller version of this is not as good or hasn't had as many good ratings as the bigger version of it. So I would say if you're interested and you wanted to maybe try out the mini one instead, because this would be more expensive since it is a 40 pan palette. I would say look up some reviews on the smaller version of the Ultimate Utopia and see if, you know, it would work for you. Hands down, I can say the big version, I am a fan. So next up, I have a few palettes here, and these are all from Neve Cosmetics. So first off, I will talk about the Scurissimi palette. This is a brand that I honestly have not really heard of. I did hear of Neve Cosmetics when I looked up swatches of Nabla Cosmetics single eyeshadows. Neve Cosmetics and Nabla Cosmetics are both based in Italy, and that's probably why, you know, there were some people doing comparison swatches between the two brands. They also kind of have a little bit of the same concept. I think Nabla has kind of taken off more into the mainstream. It's in the US. Neve Cosmetics is kind of very, very much Italian based, and if you're in the EU, you can get them, but at this point, I don't think there's any way to get your hands on them if you live in the US. I took a chance with Neve Cosmetics, and I love this palette. It's got really nice, dark, deep shades. They're very nice and blendable. I would say that there are two different kinds of mattes that I really enjoy. One is from Mert Cosmetics because they are extremely pigmented. And the other is this one. They're not as pigmented, but they're extremely blendable. A lot of the shades are a little bit more primary in nature. So this blue is kind of like a very primary type of blue. This red is also very primary. This purple, this green also, maybe a little bit. This one's a little bit more like gray. But yeah, these few shades are quite primary. A lot of other palettes, they have a little bit more of, you know, leaning towards a certain tone, leaning more warm or leaning more cool. But with these, they're just kind of very, very primary. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is what makes this palette more unique, in my opinion, because it's deep tones but primary. So if you are, let's say, not the best at blending, this palette is a good palette to get. Okay, next up is the Duochrome palette from Neve Cosmetics as well. And this one is another one of my favorites. These shades are gorgeous. They're not like a metallic foil. You can get them to be very like shimmery and glisten and very impactful still. But they're not going to be crazy shiny metallic in your face, but they are very beautiful on the eye. So I think this is a little bit more versatile because it's not that in your face, but they're still interesting enough to be unique. These kind of shift in the light as you move around. Like I said, blendability is great. They're really smooth to apply. I love the formula of Neve Cosmetics. Okay, next up is a custom set of eyeshadows. These are single eyeshadows that you can buy, and this palette is sold separately, so you can get a empty palette with 10 slots, and then you can pick and choose which shades that you like. I did get some shades which were not present in the Duochrome or the Scurissimi palette, and so I really enjoy a lot of them. But yeah, honestly, I'm a fan of pretty much all of these shades. One thing I will say is that these shades right here, which have this very kind of glimmery, dazzly look to them, the dazzle kind of subsides as you pack it onto your lid. I was raving about this shade in the beginning, but as I've used it, I have noticed that, you know, the dazzle doesn't really stay. Same for this particular shade right here. Don't know how well you can see that, but this shade right here has really nice shimmer particles in there, and it's gorgeous in the pan. The dazzle to it just kind of dissipates after a bit. Otherwise, the formula of all of these other shades I am really happy with. I love, love, love this blue. So very impressed with Neve Cosmetics on the whole. Next, we move on to the I don't know. This one is full of their lighter shades. Now, I initially thought that I would be able to use this primarily as a highlighter palette, but upon getting it, I realized that these are a little bit too kind of mid-tone or kind of light to mid-tone to be, you know, like colorful highlighters on, let's say, my cheekbones. I could use them on my eyes. Unless, let's say, you have deep skin, then sure, this probably could work as a colorful highlighter palette for you. But anyway, yeah, so with this particular palette, I wasn't as impressed with, mainly because the shades are quite sheer, they're very light, they're a little bit more pastel. I've come to notice, as Sam pointed out, because Sam pointed out, Sam's a friend of mine, hi Sam, I'm not really a pastel person. I'm a little bit more of a jewel toned person. This palette is interesting, but it's not my favorite. Some of the shades in here I do enjoy a lot. This shade right here, for instance, this shade right here I really enjoy. This purple is gorgeous. I love this one. But the rest of the shades I'm not that enthusiastic about. These are the BH Cosmetics Sweet Shop palettes. And I have the one in Cotton Candy and I have the one in Pistachio. So the Cotton Candy one is kind of purples and pinks, very fun and bright, and I'm not a big fan of this. I do like the shimmers. The mattes, however, I don't know. I think maybe it's also something to do with my skin tone, and my personal preference in color choices. Wait, let me turn this down a little bit so you can see this palette a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. So I think it's just my personal taste in colors. Like I said, not too much of a bubblegum pink pastel person at this point of my life. I do like the shimmers on top. The mattes, not so much. These two shimmers are a little bit not colors I would typically pick out to wear on my eyes. This palette's doesn't do it for me. Also, I don't like the smell of these palettes. They have a just weird like manufacturing candy smell. But I suppose that's the theme of the palettes. Okay, the pistachio one I can definitely say I really enjoy. I like this palette a lot. I'm really impressed with the shades. The top row of shimmers, gorgeous. I've used all of the shades. I've liked all of the shades. I mostly gravitate towards the deepest green. And I have used this shade quite a bit. These two shades are a little bit more pastel, but I can still make them work. I do find they are quite interesting, and I will dip into them a little bit more. And shout out to Sarah for helping me decide on which palettes to get. After watching her swatches, I did, decide that, oh, I actually really like the pistachio one. Next up, I have the Mert and Marcus After Dark palette in collaboration with Lancôme. So I really haven't seen much of any review on this. I probably could do a dedicated video for this particular palette. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments below. But in general, I think this palette is quite outstanding. The shimmers perform spectacularly. The matte shades, this shade, I had a really bad experience with a shade like this from, I think it was the Afrique palette from Juvia's Place. This shade from the Afrique palette was terribly patchy. It wouldn't blend well. Yeah. But this one from the Lancôme one is stellar. I really enjoy this. And in general, I think this is a really great palette. This shade is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. It does the beautiful dazzle dance. It's got lots of gem tones. It's got some interesting satin shades if you want to tone it down a little bit. In general, it's a really good palette in my opinion. It's not the most, how you say, eye-catching, I suppose. Especially the exterior packaging is a little bit, what's going on there? I can't really see. I think Mert and Marcus are photographers, if I'm not mistaken. But somehow the aesthetic of the palette is a bit strange to me. I don't know. The eyeshadows themselves, I am a fan. So I think that rounds up this review video. I do have some other items that I should also do a review video on, but they're not eyeshadow palettes, so I kind of want to leave that for a separate video. So yeah, I guess that's it from me, and ciao for now.